Was Sukuna holding back during his domain expansions against Gojo? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. Okay, first of all, I have an entire video talking about the holding back discussion when it comes to Gojo and Sukuna for anyone who's interested in my more general thoughts there. But today, I got specifically asked by Immortal here about a specific facet of that. And y'all can pause to read the entire thing if you'd like, but the important part is here. He says, "Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen arguments being used to say that Sukuna was holding back based upon Gojo saying that, oh, Sukuna's output is ramping up." And Immortal thinks that that was in reference to his domain amplification, but some people are saying, no, that was in reference to Sukuna's domain expansions output. So this moment in question is right here when Sukuna starts using domain amp and Gojo thinks to himself, oh wow, he's using domain amp while he has his domain open. Is he used to this? His output's ramping up. So Immortal is saying some people are taking that statement right there to mean that Sukuna is amping up the output of his domain expansion, aka the slashes are getting more powerful, which would then imply that the slashes had been intentionally held back. Like if he didn't use full power slashes, he was holding back, right? But no, that's incorrect. This is not in reference to the domain expansion slashes amping up. If anything, it's probably in reference to the domain amplification ramping up, because we do know that is a sliding scale. Just like we saw Gojo against Hanami and Jogo in the Shibuya subway station, he upped his output of Limitless in order to combat their output of domain amp. Gojo and Sukuna's domains were said to be completely equal, and this is why the sure hits canceled on the inside. Now that doesn't necessarily mean their output was 100% equal, but I think it was. I think they were both giving their all within their domains, right? And yes, Sukuna did increase the power of his slashes, but it wasn't just by increasing his output as like a conscious choice that he could do at any time, like, oh, I'm at 80%, let me crank it up to 90. No, we know that he specifically had binding vows in place to do so. That is why Sukuna's first domain was so small. It wasn't as big as it was in Shibuya because he made a binding vow to boost the power in order to destroy Gojo's barrier from the outside. We then know that he makes yet another binding vow to boost power, and that is when he turns off his sure hit on the inside in order to amplify on the outside. So Sukuna was at times increasing his power by various means, but it was through binding vows. If he had excess power that he was choosing not to use just because he was toying with Gojo, he could have just amped it without making any binding vows, but he didn't. So Sukuna was using his full-on output against Gojo in those domains. And then finally, shout out to Frank who asked me if I think Gojo reached his full potential. And I've actually got a whole video on exactly that already, so if you search that up in manganimist on YouTube, you'll find it.